Writers and artists tend to get most of the glory, but editors are a vital part of the storytelling process. A good editor generates ideas, critiques work to make it stronger, and shapes stories to make them as compelling as humanly possible. When I was editor-in-chief, my mission was to keep building the Marvel Universe into a diverse tapestry that reflects the world outside our windows. Executive editor Samhita Mukhopadhyay is doing very much the same thing at Teen Vogue. Her fresh voice informs the magazine's inclusive conversations and nuanced accounts of the tumultuous times we live in. I'm a fan of Samhita's work, so I wanted to pick her brain, one editor to another. I'm Joe Quesada. I tell stories for a living. Welcome to Marvel's Storyboards. Today I'm in Chelsea at the museum at FIT, hanging with Samhita to talk about fashion, expression, and how to keep telling relevant stories in a rapidly changing world.
Joe!
How are you? Thank you for having me.
Well.
Maybe I'll even find inspiration for our next Daredevil costume.
See, that's something right out of a comic book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look at that. So Teen Vogue has gone through some radical changes, and you've been a big part of that, right?
My background really is in digital news. This new generation coming up, teens are really navigating being interested in fashion, being interested in beauty, but also caring about politics and caring about the policies that impact their lives.
You're also known as a writer. Did you ever see fashion as something that was going to be an important part of your career?
I didn't see that coming, no. And my second book is about the election. It's called Nasty Women. And so my writing has kind of always been focused on politics and feminism and, being a journalist in those spaces. Part of why I wanted to come here today is I am really fascinated by the history of fashion, and I think that can be a source of empowerment. I do see this kind of current between fashion and art and expression, but also politics and culture, and I've always been interested in that.
It is an interesting cross-section, it really is.
When you create a character, how do you think about a character's costume? Like, how do you think about how you're going to dress them?
Well, I can't speak for everybody else, but for myself, it's who is the character, more importantly, who's the alter ego? What are their powers? And then what's going to look cool?
Yeah.
At the end of the day. We're definitely treading into the 60s and 70s, I'd say here. Oh, no, 86. Where are the shoulder pads? What do you consider a classic era in fashion, like for you?
I think for my personal style, what's kind of influenced me the most is the glamour of the 70s. My mom moved here in the early 1970s from India, and she was like a very glamorous, like she had hair like Cher, and she always had bell bottoms on. I grew up playing in her closet, and that's when I think of like a chic modern woman, I think of a woman in like some great 70s clothing and like a good blowout. It's feminine, but it's still like a strong woman.
Mm-hmm. I'm an 80s kid, and I was a musician to boot in the 80s, so you can imagine. I had the most glorious mullet.
Oh, I believe it.
But they should never, ever, ever come back. If you look at the history of comics and how costumes have changed over the years, they're so reflective of the era, Look at this thing from 1968. How mod is that?
That is mod.
Yeah.
What have been some of the changes over the years? Are clothes would you say that characters, it seems like they've gotten more defined, their bodies have gotten larger.
It's all an idealization, but there was definitely an over-sexualization of female characters that happened during the course of a large span of comics history. And that's changed a lot as they've taken on a more real-world approach. So if it's a character that's going to go into battle, they're wearing a costume that is akin to somebody who's going to battle. We have so many great female characters that lead teams, like the X-Men, Captain Marvel, of course, Kamala Khan, who's Ms. Marvel, a character called Dust.
The first ever Muslim woman comic book character.
Was an X-Men.
Yeah.
It's clear walking through here, all these designers are telling a story. The story of their times, their eras, the story of their lives. How do you view fashion from a storytelling standpoint?
I think of fashion as a story. It's a story that you tell about yourself, a set of decisions that you make and how you're going to express yourself in the world. And I think that translates to how we tell stories. So how does fashion impact how you tell the story of a superhero?
In the case of Peter Parker, well, the Spider-Man costume is iconic. But what Peter Parker wears when he's Peter Parker is really, really important because he's this sort of lower middle class kid, always struggling to pay the rent, to help his Aunt May. So we try to at least give his alter ego that kind of look. writer, blogger, teacher, executive editor, did a lot of things. You maintain a storyteller all the way through. Tell me about yourself as a storyteller.
The moment I realized that there was more to writing than just putting sentences together. It's about the experience. It's the feeling that it evokes for somebody. And we have the possibility and the potential to kind of really open people's eyes, to have them feel empowered and have them feel a greater sense of connection. And to me, that is ultimately, that's what I see my kind of life's work.
When did you know you were good at it?
I still don't even know if I'm good at it, right?
That's actually a good answer. That's fine. Yeah.
And I started writing probably in the late 90s, early 2000s. I just got obsessed with it. Something would happen that felt transformational when I would sit down and write something. There was nothing you could do to stop me from doing it.
Let's walk around a little more. It's a great spot. I hear that around the offices they call you Auntie. Is that true?
How did you get that?
Oh, I have spies up at Teen Vogue.
Yeah, you really do.
Right.
They do call me Auntie around the office.
Do you find that endearing? Do you like?
I do. Yeah, at first I was like, stop calling me old, but I actually do embrace it. A fundamental part of my work has been about bringing in these diversity of voices. And we want a newsroom that kind of reflects the America that we're reporting on and that we're living in.
How does that manifest itself?
It's in the story selection. The interviews that we decide to have, the kind of celebrities we choose to profile. I don't see this as diversity, I see it as inclusion. We're interested in good stories. And some of the best stories have diversity in them. They are inclusive. And we're not just going to focus on that, but that's an important part of what we're thinking about. Marvel has been on the front lines of really having diverse characters and inclusive characters. And, there's probably been some pushback and criticism, but what has been the positive response to these characters?
Well, the positive, of course, has been new readership, many, many more women coming in to reading comics. Marvel has made a legacy out of reflecting the world outside our window. Our stories take place in New York, in Los Angeles, in the real world. So for us not to reflect the world outside our window would be completely disingenuous. And when we don't do that, it clearly reflects on how fans react. What excites you about Teen Vogue today, where Teen Vogue is going?
The youth are so inspiring. Having the opportunity to see the world from their eyes and feel the possibility. We had the opportunity last year, we put Emma Gonzalez on the cover. Her and a group of students came together and really changed the public conversation on gun violence.
Amazing.
They are resonating with an entire generation that's fed up. I think Gen Z is criticized for being on their phones and for, this and that. Well, guess what? They're reading on those phones and they're communicating with each other and they're frustrated. And, they're dealing with the same existential angst that we dealt with as teenagers. Just having the opportunity to kind of see the world through their eyes does give me hope for generations to come. And I feel very grateful to have the opportunity to kind of shape those voices.
What do you want the next chapter to be in your story?
I'm really interested in the next phase of digital media. The one thing that's not going to change is people's cravings for stories that they connect to. But I think the basics of storytelling are fundamental and those transcend platform.
Samhita, thank you so much and generous with your time and your story. It's been truly inspirational.
No, thank you, Joe. You are such an inspiration yourself, so it's
You're
an
supposed
honor.
to say that's my show. So.
A day downtown with Samhita reminded me that each of our stories is still being written. But the more people you include in your story, the better off it is.